Hi, everyone. My name is El Ray, and I'm interviewing Carmen today. We're not going to give her location, so we're going to leave that anonymous, but we're doing this podcast in the US, and this podcast is the first one that we're doing for the Courtside USA Chronicles, and we're going to be chronicalizing protective parent stories. So Carmen is our first guest. Thank you
Hi,
and welcome.
thank you for having me.
Yes. So let's see here. So in order to kind of streamline this interview process for the podcast today, I have a list of questions that we're going to go through that's going to help you tell your story from the beginning. It could even start from like when you started dating your ex-partner to the marriage, and after the marriage, after being married, what evolved, and your children, and then what led to divorce. Okay, so I think that's oftentimes completely missed by the family court system because of a no-fault divorce. It's like the judges could care less what happened in the past and what brought you in front of them, like today in present day, for divorce and custody. They
Yes,
just don't really seem to care these days. But it's so important because history truly matters and history repeats itself. And if there was any kind of domestic abuse or domestic violence, um, and it might not even be that outwardly like physical, it could be more covert and so forth, or addiction. It's oftentimes not acknowledged in the family court system, and then it can create a huge mess when people are trying to resolve custody issues and so forth. So,
yes.
Carmen, I would like you to tell me if you could describe your relationship with your ex in one word or a few. How would you describe your relationship?
I would describe it as abusive, verbally abusive, uh, demeaning, controlling. It's not one word, but it's hard to break it down to one word.
Okay. Did that start
Manipulative,
like
I guess. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
uh,
Manipulative.
manipulative? Okay. Did that start when you were dating, or how did the dating look like?
It started when I was dating. When I was first dating, there was some episodes of um, well, there was verbal and physical abuse, and um, this controlling what I was wearing, what I was doing, who I was seeing. And do you want specific examples?
Yeah, if you can think of anything specific.
I just remember we were dating, like something specific, ripping a dress that I was wearing because it was inappropriate to wear to church. I ended up with a huge bruise on my arm because over a spider that I moved off a porch that was had every right to be there. Just ridiculous things that were just a form of control.
Oh, because you
And
brushed the spider off of a porch, he hit you.
yeah, he slammed a door into me and I had a huge hematoma from it.
Okay, because he told you the spider had a right to be there.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
I'm terrified of spiders. So
Yes. Right.
naturally.
Okay. So and so that kind of happened while you were dating. You saw these things and he would do certain things. Was he verbally abusive at that point in time?
Very much so. Yes, very like verbally abusive, demeaning, um, belittling, demeaning, belittling, I guess the same thing. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we did separate for a while. And then he came back this changed, wonderful person. Sorry, allergies. This wonderful changed person. And, that we were meant to be and everything was going to be great, and he had like found himself and changed behaviors. So uh
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's good to mention, Carmen, because I was going to ask you that. Like, if, and that's what a lot of judges and court professionals, I think, kind of like shame domestic violence victims. Well,
Mm,
if you knew they were abusive, or if they were abusive, why'd you stay? Or why did you marry that person? So
absolutely.
it's interesting that you brought that up, that you did separate because of the abusive behavior, but
Yes,
he came back kind of acting like he's a new person. And that oftentimes really happens quite often.
absolutely.
So how long was your separation?
Um, it was a few years actually. It was like a couple years. And
Oh,
it's like what you said, he's very charming, very like charismatic, like come back all loving and wonderful, put you on that pedestal, make you feel like you've ever felt better in your never felt better in your life, and make you feel so special.
mm,
And that it's very hard with that deception. I
yeah,
mean, it's hard not to believe it.
right.
So exactly what you were saying, it's difficult for people to judge that haven't been in that situation. It's difficult. It's easy for them to judge, but it's difficult for them to see why you would stay, or you fell in love with that person and you fell in love with somebody you thought that person was until you actually saw true colors.
Yes.
And it
Okay.
takes a long time to see those true colors.
Yes, it
Gonna use
really does.
sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, it could take decades. It could actually, sadly, take a long time, like decades.
Yes.
Marriage, family, children, before certain things come out.
Very true.
So you were separated and then you got back together, and then did you date a while before getting married, or?
Um, it makes me sound so stupid in a way, but we actually got pregnant right away. And so um, we got pregnant, and next thing you know, I want to marry you. Everything's going to be wonderful. I'm going to take care of everything. And so I went for it. Seemed like a changed person, a great guy, responsible, like good job, good career, stable, everything that I thought I wanted.
So he had a good career and he was professional.
Yes.
Okay, like suit and tie, or
Military.
like he was military? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And how old were you at the time?
Gosh, and it was about well, no, I got pregnant with Andrew 29, so I was older
Okay.
because I was traveling a lot. And like I said, we separated and there was a few years in between and we got back together. I was 29.
Okay. So, and then that's when you got pregnant for the first time.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And so you quickly married after that while you were pregnant?
Yes, I married when I was halfway through my pregnancy.
Okay. Okay. And then how was that? Did you have a big wedding? Did you elope?
It was a nice wedding. It was small, like friends, close friends and family.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And were you both in love and everything was still wonderful?
Yes and no. I know that sounds terrible, but like I there was maybe more that idea of things and like things were going to be good, but you start to see signs and you start to see those red flags. And even on my wedding day, I had like that bad stomach feeling of like something, maybe I'm not doing the right thing or there's something not right here. But it was pregnant, and
Mm-hmm.
other stuff was there, like the career and the responsibility and all those good things, and I thought those were other things that you could overcome.
Yeah. And you kind of put those to the back burner, kind of ignored them.
Yes.
Do you ever think you were kind of in your own denial sometimes about things that were?
Absolutely, because you want to see you like I'm always a person that sees the best in people, and I try not to dwell on the negatives and dwell on like the bad things in people. It's like, okay, I try to see the best, and like I'm solution type person. Like, well, if there's a problem, we can overcome it and we can work on it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So you're
I,
like a fixer,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yes. So, what is your career?
I'm a healthcare professional.
A healthcare professional. Okay.
Yes.
So you help others, and that's kind of how you always have been? Like,
Yes. Yeah, always.
okay. So how many children did you guys have?
3.
3. Okay. And are they close in age?
Yes, I have, um, one older, and then the 2 younger are twins.
Oh, okay. Okay. And did he help out with the children?
No.
No.
No, he didn't help with the children. He was gone because he was military, he was gone all the time. I pretty much functioned as a single mom, and, I wasn't close to family. My family is all in another country, and because of military, we were in stationed somewhere where I didn't know anybody, and so I was pretty much functioning as a single mom, doing my own thing, learning as I went. And even when he was around, he was too busy with work or too busy with, you know, I don't know how to say it, but like man stuff, like going out with the boys and doing his own thing.
Okay. So you felt kind of lonely in your marriage, I guess?
Absolutely. I don't know, there was a quote somewhere I read, there's nothing more lonely in the world than, being in a marriage that you feel alone.
Mm-hmm.
It's more so than being alone, like, if you weren't in a marriage, it's more so. Forget
Yeah.
what the quote was, but very much.
Yes. And I can relate, definitely. I think a lot of people can. So, how did the marriage dissolve, and like what went bad to result in divorce?
Um, you know, not being present and not being a priority, myself or the children, and there was verbal and physical abuse. He
Mhm.
was, the type of person that would, like, headbutt me, give me a bloody nose, and say, "Well, you walked into me." Like, very calculated, not like a person that would, leave bruises or punch you or something that would be, like, incriminating. There's a type of person that would be very deceptive about it, like, "Well, I didn't do anything. You walked into me." Like that, like, innocent kind of, um,
Kind
push me
of
to take.
crazy making type stuff.
Oh my gosh, very much so. The type that, would call you names, call you a monster, call you horrible things, swear at me, and just kind of it's like that poke, poke, poke until you explode. And then when you explode, say, "Wow, look at you, you're crazy."
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, like verbal abuse, what would that look like?
Using things in my past against me, using family issues against me, swearing, calling me worthless, useless, nobody would ever want you. You're crazy, you're a monster, like, oh, like terrible things.
Okay.
Constant, that's like that constant belittling where you just start to doubt yourself, lose self-worth, and you don't even know what way's up anymore.
Okay. So, did you ever like do reactive abuse kind of thing? Did you ever lash out at him?
I did, and that's where, it's so difficult for me because you have somebody there pushing you and you're confused and you're thinking they're saying you're a monster, you're the one that's abusive, you're this horrible person because of that reactive abuse, because of getting in my face and close up to my face and in my space and saying, "Yeah, what are you going to do about it?" And I knee jerk slapped him a couple times, and then I felt horrible. I'm just not that type of person, and I felt so guilty, like, "Oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? Why am I doing this?" And I sought counseling and help. I even did an anger management class because I was so worried. And coming through therapy, well, to this day, like years and years of therapy, finding out about reactive abuse. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't even realize it at the time.
Did you think you were in an abusive relationship at the time?
I didn't even think about it or realize it at the time. I just thought, gosh, it sounds so stupid now after, years of therapy and education and learning, but you just feel so stupid and naive that I just thought, "Oh my gosh, well, I'm doing wrong or I'm screwing up." I mean, I didn't have the best role models growing up, and thought, well, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm reacting wrong or doing something wrong. If I just do better, maybe it won't be like this. Or if I get therapy, or, it would just, like I said, you didn't know which way was up anymore. And I think one of the most, like, what's the word? Just reality checks for me was a good friend told me, like, I don't even recognize you anymore, because I had just changed and lost self-worth, but I've lost a whole sense of self completely. I didn't know who I was anymore.
Was that like well into the marriage or towards the end?
Yeah, well into the marriage.
Okay, but you started identifying that towards the end, that you had like
Yeah,
lost who you were, right?
yes, yes,
Did you
exactly.
were you able to like have hopes and dreams, or did you feel like you lost that somewhere
Oh my
throughout?
god, I feel like I'd lost everything. I just kind of lived in fear. I remember starting to have panic attacks for the first time in my life and being so scared, and I didn't quite realize what it was at the time. And it would be like, when the garage door opened from him coming home from work, and all of a sudden I would have this complete panic attack. And I know what they are now, but I didn't know at the time and how to make sense of all that. And I
Okay.
didn't have hopes or dreams. I was terrified. I had, 3 young children, and I had stopped my career to raise our children, especially because he was military and he was gone all the time. So, I wasn't working, and I felt like I was completely dependent on this person. My family was all in another country. So I was scared.
You were a stay-at-home mom for a while then?
Yeah, for 5 years.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Which
So
I loved every moment. I cherish every moment of being able to be there with my children, you know, but that not but, it was something that was used against me. Um, that and it was gave more of that. I explain, but it gave him more control.
mhm. Like in the marriage or in the divorce custody process?
Um,
In the marriage?
More like just to use against me, but more in the marriage process, like being in the marriage. It was like that control. Like, I have all the money, you're nothing. Nobody's ever going to want you. You're not going to make it.
Oh, so he's told you stuff like that.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
I'm
Yep.
feeling completely like dependent, or like that codependency.
Yeah, like you can't get out and you can't escape, you
Yeah,
know? Like this is
exactly.
it. This is just what it is, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
And I'm Christian as well, and I was going to church and praying about it, and, everybody was saying, God could change things and work miracles, and just pray. And I really, really wanted to believe that it could be better and change, especially when you have children and you don't want them to be in a divorced home and you don't want to go through all that.
Mhm. So, did you guys go to counseling?
We did go to counseling, and it was just completely frustrating and useless because there was no honesty there. He is the type of person, like I said, that is super charming and charismatic, and
Mm,
he just wants to impress everybody. And so there was no honesty there. There was no transparency. And so it just made me feel worse and look worse and feel bad, and him have more power and control over me.
yeah, so you were like divulging deep stuff and telling everything, right? And
Right.
opening up. And he
Because
was just, yeah,
because I really wanted it to work. I wanted it to change.
right. So he wasn't really like opening up, participating, like that would actually matter, make a difference, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Was he typically a quiet person?
Oh, no, he had to be the center of attention. He was like the party guy that, be with one of the boys, and wanted, always the center of attention, not quiet.
Okay, very outgoing, and how did he have a lot of friends?
Not a lot of friends actually. He has very always had very few friends, just a couple close ones.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know, but yeah, just a couple close friends. But
Okay.
always Mr. like charming and charismatic and life of the party.
Okay. So he had hobbies and he did like to get out, and but he was out so much. He wasn't really a family man at home.
No, no, not at all. It was a lot with the military community, going out with the boys, getting drunk, going to bars, not coming home. And then when he didn't come home at night and I was ticked, upset with 3 small children, it would be like, well, you're not my mother. You're not going to tell me what to do.
Mhm. He said he would stay out all night.
Yeah. Oh, there's times he would disappear for a weeks at time. He
Wow.
would, if I was mad at me and, um, I was upset about something, he'd be like, I'm not going to tolerate this. And he'd just walk out, turn his phone off, and leave me for like a couple weeks at a time with three small children. I'd have children like my little boy crying and saying, I want my daddy, and I can't even get a hold of him.
Mhm. Wow. So, how many years were you like a military wife?
7.
Okay. Did he eventually get out of the military or
He stayed in.
he stayed in? Okay. So, how did it result in divorce? I mean, did you ask for the divorce? Did he ask for the divorce? Like,
Um, Actually, it was pretty. He had deployed for a really, really long time, and I was on my own with the kids for a long time. And at that point, you just kind of come to a realization that I can do this on my own. I don't need you. I'm going to do this on my own. And having that time on my own just made me realize that how much of myself I was missing, and how much, like, being more of myself and not living in fear
mhm,
and feeling horrible all the time. So when he came back from deployment, I just had a different attitude, like that stronger, I
mm,
don't care type attitude. Well, with somebody like him who's very controlling and has to, like, you know, I guess just have that control over everything, he did not like that. It was like, well, you've changed. And I went to a family event out of country. And while I was away, I got a text message that said, I'm leaving you. I'll
hmm,
be gone when you come back. So he left and he filed for divorce.
mhm. Did,
But,
did you have
that
kids or did he have the kids?
I had the children with
When
me.
you were on the trip. Okay.
Yeah. And,
Wow.
it was just so, what a wonderful way to get divorced too, right? Over text, very mature.
Right.
Uh, just it hit me hard. Even though I had found that new attitude, it didn't mean that I wanted to be divorced. It
Hmm.
didn't mean, it just meant I wasn't going to tolerate being treated like that.
Right.
It didn't mean that I wanted to be in a divorced home and have my kids go through that and live that type of life. I was really hoping for more, like to work at things.
Yeah.
But it was shocking, and it was hard. It was hard to come home, not knowing what to expect,
Hmm.
coming home with three small children. They were very young, like, uh 4 and 6.
Hmm.
So I just didn't know, coming home to a house, what would be gone, what would be happening, how was this going to look. So,
Hmm.
when I was gone, it was the perfect time for him to leave, because he packed up and took whatever he wanted. And
Hmm.
then shortly, I don't think, not shortly, it was a couple months later, and he didn't even bother to like reach out or see the children or anything. Then I got served with divorce papers. And that day, oh, it was just so like heartbreaking. And I just remember the server saying, "You better get an attorney." And I
Really?
was like, I knew nothing about,
Right.
about that. And I was just like, it scared me, because I was like, what, why?
Yeah. So he left, and then a month later is when you got divorce papers.
Yeah, it was a couple months.
Oh, okay. So you were doing the single mom life separated, and then he served you.
Yeah.
Okay. Did he try to talk to you and try to resolve things or reconcile, or he would just like ignored you, or what did that look like?
No, he just ignored completely. He
Hmm.
didn't try to talk to me. He never tried to reconcile. He was more worried about his status and his job, which I forgot to mention. I had called the police a few times on him for violent acts. You know, the one when I was pregnant with my twins and getting shoved up against a wall and screamed at and like falling to the floor. I was shoved so hard. I was full term with my twins. And just, I tried to call the police. He broke the phone in half, like, or like it was, a flip phone back then or something. It wasn't like our iPhones now. But I remember like breaking and like cutting my hand. And when the cops had come in the past, it was always kind of like, oh, well, he's military and, PTSD, and you have to be understanding, and always kind of like making excuses and protecting him, and him saying, oh, she's crazy. Um, and me doubting myself and not knowing what to think. And I was scared. I was so afraid to press charges or do anything,
You were
now
telling
looking.
them that you're crazy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, even back then, after having babies, I took antidepressants and no other like psych anything, but I took some antidepressants. I think 99% of our world is on antidepressants nowadays. And he would go to the cabinet and grab them and show the police, look, she's crazy. And,
Mhm.
I was terrified. And, he had all this status. I am a officer in the military and she's crazy. So,
Yes, yes. And I think too, and I'm not trying to be sexist or anything like that, but from what my knowledge is from guy friends that I know, women and men, I feel like men sometimes are very hesitant to seek help when they have anxiety or depression or even talk about things openly. Like
absolutely.
women are
Oh,
a little bit different than that and might be more willing to get prescription medicine or something to help with depression or so I mean that's from personal knowledge. I know people may disagree, but a lot of the men I know just won't admit that there's problems and that
I
they.
I completely agree,
They
and even
might
more
look
so.
down on women who do get help. Yeah.
Yes, yes, they're like, yes, like, well, especially for men, it was looked upon as weaker, and especially when you're talking to the military, who are supposed to be like, big and tough, and nothing's supposed to affect them, and God forbid, like they admit that they have a problem, or
Or
not all,
PTSD or
but
anxiety or anything. Yeah.
yeah, exactly,
Right. They're normal, nothing's wrong. Yes. And the
exactly,
thing is, a lot of people suffer from PTSD from abuse. So so you were served and then you were told to get an attorney. And
right.
then you were like just probably shocked, flabbergasted. Did you get an attorney right away or what happened?
No, not right away, not until he started, got some, I don't know, powerful, like, I don't want to say sleazy, 'cause I don't know, it sounds bad,
So
but I,
he had like the top dog attorney in town.
yeah, like
Uh,
this kind of really nasty, like dirty attorney. And then I eventually got an attorney, and I had an awesome attorney out there, one that where I was, it was a military affiliated attorney. They weren't they're outside. You can't hire a military attorney, but they knew military and they were wonderful. So, but then back then it was all new to me, and I still had money to pull from. I mean, I was a stay-home mom, but I could still get loans and do stuff to be able to hire an attorney.
right. So you had a decent attorney for the divorce, right?
Yeah.
Did you guys figure out custody at the same time?
Yes, custody was done there originally, and I had full custody. He was, visit the children when he could, every other holiday if he could, because he was military, and for a portion of the summer.
Hmm. So did he still travel a lot being in the military?
Yes, yes. He was, TDY, or like, their little TDY, like they would go on their small stints, maybe a month, couple months, whatever, or be deployed for quite a few.
Did you guys agree to you having full or did you go to a trial in
We
custody?
didn't. There was no trial. It was the mediation, and he didn't even fight for the children.
Okay, so he just gave you full custody and would visit here and there,
Right.
and he was fine with that. Okay.
Right.
So, and you said they were young, like 4, 6 at the time.
Right. Yes.
So, and how many years were you married?
7.
Okay. And then, so how many years did you have full custody and have that visitation schedule in place? And
So that was basically, I um moved out of that state shortly after, because I had to move because of the whole military, like we were military housing and I needed to move. So I signed my divorce papers in 2013.
mhm.
And in that same, well, not the same year, because it was after December, but the beginning of 2014, now that I was in a new state and there was a different jurisdiction for the children, all of a sudden I get served with papers to fight for full custody.
Hmm. From the old jurisdiction that you were in?
from the new one.
From the new one. Okay, did he move to the new jurisdiction as well?
He did. Yes.
Okay,
Not right away. So we physically separated in 2010.
yeah.
Was a ton of litigation, of course, even just to settle like child support, just fighting back and forth. Just, I don't even honestly remember. It was so ridiculous because he wasn't even fighting for custody, just like visitation stuff. And
Mhm.
then he just wouldn't agree on anything. Everything was just so difficult and complicated. So finally, after those years, and I had full custody all that time, and he
It
was
took 3
visiting.
years. It took 3 years to iron it all out.
Yes. And I
Wow.
had visitation, or he had visitation for that. I had full custody.
Yeah.
And then that was in September 2013 when I finally signed the decree. And then it was literally months later, not even a year, that he filed in the new jurisdiction we were in for full custody.
Okay, so you had 3 years of litigation, just figuring out all these details, him not
Right,
agreeing. You finally finalized it, and within a year,
right,
sued again and had to start all over again.
right. So I
Okay,
finally was like, oh, like this is
so
over.
you're the defendant in all of this.
Correct, always,
Mhm.
always.
You think you
I
could have,
always
yeah. You
I
think
always opted for mediation. Sorry.
yeah,
And he would never agree to any mediation. It was always he wanted court and a lawyer, but I
yeah.
wanted to not waste money and not go there and like
Come
I
to an
just
agreement.
yeah,
Yeah. So he was seeking full custody,
correct.
and he had a
That
new attorney and everything,
yep,
right?
new jurisdiction, new attorney, and now all of a sudden he wanted full custody.
Okay, and what was he alleging anything or what?
Oh, it was just honestly looking back, it feels like it was just a setup calculated attack. Because I was on my own for 3 years and I had met somebody
Mhm.
and we had, moved in together. Everything was great, going well, and we married um in December 2013. It was literally months, like just a couple months after that, that I was served with the fight for custody from him.
Okay, I
In
see.
my heart, I believe it was because he lost control completely. And there was this new man in the picture, and my kids adored him, and now he lost control over me. And so all of a sudden, he's filing for full custody.
Okay. So, you went to trial?
I did eventually, after years of litigation, constant excessive litigation,
Yeah.
financial devastation. I'm sure that I am positive that was part of the tactic. I
Yes.
went through a couple attorneys because I just couldn't afford it.
Mhm.
I cashed out all my life savings, my retirement, every penny. I borrowed money from my family. I took out loans. I did everything I could to survive.
Right.
And
How many
my
years of
marriage,
litigation?
oh gosh, because I went to trial in 2017.
Okay, so from
So
2013
years.
to 17?
So 3 years. So beginning of 2014 until 2017.
So 3 years, his attorney's sending your attorney XYZ, your attorney's responding. You get all these bills every month, your bills
Oh,
monthly. Yeah, thousands of dollars. So you lost your retirement?
yeah,
Is
all my retirement. I spent all my retirement. I spent everything. They took me to constant endless filings of contempt, you name it.
so they were filing contempt on you,
Oh,
right?
constant.
Yeah,
Yes.
did your attorney say file counter contempt or
No, they never did. I don't feel like I was represented well. I feel like I was taken advantage of. I
mm,
didn't have the money. I didn't have one solid attorney. I was like the single mom, not single. I had a husband, but it fell apart quickly
yeah,
because then
marriage?
all of a sudden it was terrible. My second marriage didn't last because I had this constant litigation and money and
Mm,
custody and all this stuff going on,
yeah,
and there was just so many issues there. It just couldn't survive.
yeah. It's like all consuming. And I know a lot of the moms watching this and fathers as well, who are put in these shoes. And some of them are good fathers and some are what we're talking about, abusive fathers. There's abusive mothers too, But when the other party is constantly targeting you and
Yes.
trying to wear you down and destroy you, basically, like
Yes.
it's all consuming. It's hard to keep up a new marriage or a new anything. If
I
you lose
had
your job in this process, it's hard to focus in your next job. I mean, it's just so hard to live. It's really not living, right?
absolutely not. I mean, you have no peace. It's just constant, like you said, and then you're worried about money and you're just constantly trying to fight these things and figure things out. And um, he had filed CPS against me, like you name it. And I was just constantly in this battle, exhausted. And I was working full time and trying to take care of 3 young children. And my husband at the time had a special needs child who was leaving me like all the care on me. It broke me completely.
Yeah. So you had no time for yourself, really. I
No,
mean, no
none.
self-care time or anything, which is so important going through these battles. It's so hard to even find that time. It's near
Absolutely.
impossible. So I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Awful. So I know like you probably worked in your 20s and
Oh
30s
yeah.
and save for that retirement, save for your future.
Yeah, I moved from a different country. I pursued my career. I
Living
started
your
from
dream,
a really young age at 21 at trauma hospitals. Like I pursued it heavy and I had my retirement. I worked really hard.
right, to build a future for yourself,
Yeah.
so you can retire someday and support your children and give them a future. Maybe if you did not have, a good, I don't know, did you have a good upbringing? And
Financially, yes, but not the closeness. Like, well, I can't say that. I had a strained relationship mostly with my father, actually.
I
So
see.
there
Okay.
was, difficulty. Like you say, no family is perfect. It definitely had its issues, but
Oh yeah. Yes.
I mean, not financially, but I definitely wanted to have that
That,
stability. I was very career driven. I wanted a family so bad. I love children. I love my children so much. I wanted nothing more than to be a mom my whole life and just to like give them everything I had and more, to have that relationship, not just the financial
mhm,
part.
right. So 3 years and then you go to trial.
Yeah.
Like you're basically like wiped out. Is this when you're wiped out financially? And
Yes. I wiped out, barely holding on, now living in a new rental home by myself with my 3 children because I had to separate from my second husband because of everything. And
mhm,
my the children's dad was using that against me because of the special needs child. And, long story with all that, but it was safer and better for me to separate. And because I separated, that was like the nail in the coffin for my second marriage.
mhm, I see.
So I was on my own with my 3 kids in a new place that I didn't have any foundation and looking into trial.
Mhm. Did you have an attorney at the time?
I did that I had given all my life savings and my retirement to, who dropped me 5 days before trial.
So they took all your money leading up to trial and did all the emails and
Yep.
the trying to negotiate stuff, never got anywhere. And
Right.
then led you to trial and they quit on you.
Yep. 5 days before trial because it was about money. There wasn't enough money. She knew I was broke and had nothing left and I wasn't worth it to her to go through trial. So she left me completely abandoned going into the trial fighting for my kids.
So she didn't think you would pay her for her going through the trial, or she wouldn't put you on payments or anything like that. It was
I was
just,
already making payments of $1,000 a month and, had already run out of money. And she was saying, "Oh, you owe so much money." And, you know, it was just always wanting more and saying, "Oh, I owed her like $40,000, even though there wasn't that much done." But his attorney, would call and
mhm,
litigate and emails and just
drain
drain
you.
everything. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So 5 days before trial, she says she's out.
Right.
And what?
That was the biggest, oh, that was absolutely horrendous. And so I was terrified, left scrambling for an attorney, calling everybody, asking for resources and help. And I finally found somebody that, I thought would help me, that was willing to take a low retainer. Most people said they wanted 10 grand down because of the length of the case, the extent of it. It was like, you know, massive amounts of filings from his attorney. And so not many people would even look at it and say they can't prepare for this type of intense trial in such a short period of time. I found somebody last minute, and they continued the trial only by 2 months.
Mhm.
And the new attorney just did a horrible, horrible, horrible job.
Do you think they knew your background, or they weren't really privy to the situation, or?
I don't know if she just didn't care, just wanted that money, didn't do the research. She just was very poor at what she did. I didn't really have time. I was like desperate. I didn't really have time to like seek credentials and everything. And I really hoped and trusted in her. It was just a joke. I mean, she had nothing. She told me that they had nothing on me,
Mhm.
and that there was no reason for them to take custody away from me, that I didn't need any witnesses. I was trusting in her. She told me I didn't need witnesses. And
Did she tell you to trust her?
yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I've
That,
experienced that as well.
yeah,
And a trial with no witnesses,
yeah,
you
no
know, just
witnesses, nothing,
have a witness list, right?
nothing. Yeah, I had a witness list, but
Yeah.
didn't call anybody in.
Makes no sense.
No,
Okay.
nothing.
So you lost
Even
that
had
trial.
the forensic psychologist reports, everything. She said we didn't need the forensic psychologist to take the stand, didn't need anybody.
Hmm. So you paid for an evaluation?
Ugh, $2,500, yes.
Was it in your favor, or was it neutral? Like, with
Uh, it was not totally in my favor. It came up, and that was the problem, is that the things that I find out now after learning more about all of this, the things that popped up were because of traumatic victimization, like PTSD from the abuse. And it would have made a world of difference to have that forensic psychologist testify at the trial to be able to explain those things, which he never did. My parenting evaluation was outstanding. My ex's was horrible. And he also had 3 axis 2 personality disorders labeled in his report. None of that was ever brought to the table. It was only focused on an attack on me, a full-fledged, complete attack on me, and me trying to defend myself. There was no attack on him ever, because I didn't have the money or the attorney, the strength, like not personal strength, but the strength of an attorney to implement that.
Do you ever feel like whatever attorney he hired kind of always bullied the ones you'd hire, so they didn't
Oh,
even stand up?
absolutely.
Like, did they not even try to?
Pretty much. I mean, now after going through all of this, I've talked to many attorneys that wouldn't even take the case against opposing counsel because she was so abusive, excessively litigates.
Right. They'd have no time for their other cases, basically,
Right,
you know?
right. Yeah.
And
And
if
she
you're out of
wasn't,
money,
yeah,
who's gonna take your case, you know? Yeah,
right. And she wasn't somebody that would play by the book. She would always do everything like
yeah,
I say corrupt, but she didn't play by the rules.
yeah. Okay. So what was the result of that trial?
It was mind blowing, honestly. Like, um, it makes me like choke up bad because that was one of the most traumatic events of my life. I have never felt like that in my life. Like, I thought there was no way I would lose my children going into trial.
Mhm.
what do you call it? The decision, like
The order
like
or,
to the end when they tell you, the judge tells you what the decision is or what his
oh,
decision.
so they made the decision on the spot right at
Yeah,
the end of the trial? They didn't
right.
have time to deliberate or anything?
A little bit, but then they call you back in and they sit there and they tell you, so you have to be present, and they tell you. My attorney that day was like, "Oh, we're fine. There's no way they're going to take the children away. You're totally fine." And I get in there and it was like earth shattering. Not only did I lose full custody, I lost everything. I got 48 hours a month of visitation with one phone call a week, like worse than prison, like worse than what a like a convicted criminal would get.
So 48 hours a month, like
48 hours, one weekend a month, and one phone call a week. That's it.
so is that 2 nights, 2 full days? Like
Right.
Friday,
Yeah.
Saturday night?
Right. From picking them up Friday until Sunday afternoon.
Just one time a month,
Yep.
and then one call a week, like FaceTime or just a phone call?
It was supposed to be either, but he never allowed it. So I've only ever been allowed a phone call.
And were those actually scheduled?
Scheduled, yes.
Did he enforce that on his end at his house? Did he make sure the kids were available to speak to you?
Um, mostly, mostly, but the kids were devastated and like, you know, wanted to talk to me. It was mostly enforced. It happened. I don't know how much was enforced.
Mhm. So how many years did that schedule continue?
It's been to today. It's been
From
4 years.
2017
Yeah,
to today?
yeah.
Okay. So it's
It's
going on 4 years.
like that day in the courtroom, you know, you experience, like people say, like experiencing trauma, like when everything around you just goes black and you can't see anything and everything just completely shuts down. It
Yeah.
was the worst time. There was nothing more devastating, honestly, in my life that I've been through to date.
Did you feel like you were gonna faint or
Oh
anything like
my
that?
God. Yes. I don't even know how I was still standing. Like I was seriously in shock. I think that's the only way you describe it. Like everything went black and could not like hear anything else or like talk or anything until I got out of the courthouse where I just like broke down sobbing. And then everything from there was just total like trauma response. Like
Mhm.
I stayed with a friend. I couldn't go home. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. It was horrible. It was absolutely the worst time I've ever had.
Did you have any friends with you at the time at trial, or was
I
it
did.
hard to find
Yeah,
people? You
I
did?
did have a girlfriend with me. Yes.
Okay. Did you find it hard to find people to go with you to court?
Absolutely. It's, like a few of my good friends absolutely were there and stood beside me, but it was hard. People don't want to get involved when it comes to court and litigation. They want nothing to do with it.
And it's even hard for them to take off of work. I mean, this
Yes.
is during work days. We have to miss work, and it's very difficult.
Oh my goodness, yes. With my career, it was very taxing on my career because there's no ever consideration on your schedule. It's always about their schedule, and they'll change things last minute or change this continuance. You book it off work and then you've got to find somebody to cover you. It's a
Mhm.
nightmare.
Yes. So for almost 4 years now, you've had 1 week in a month, right? And one call a week. And I know I'm guessing after time, does that kind of dwindle a little bit, even the calls? I mean, when the kids get busy, is it hard to keep that up, or have they been keeping that up?
No, they've been keeping it up.
Yeah.
Our bond was so close. Like I was their primary person. We were so close, and it was absolutely devastating. All my children have been diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, depression, and adjustment disorder since this has happened.
Yeah, so adjustment disorders is very common. I think a lot of children have PTSD, but it's oftentimes not brought up or brought to the light. How did you get them diagnosed? Did your ex take them?
It was just their initial physician appointment, their primary care physician,
Mhm.
when he took over care or he took over custody. that's when it was all um, reported, diagnosed in the records.
When he took over, did he take them to all the appointments and everything like that?
Well, that was just a primary care physician appointment. Yeah, I guess like the original, when they get like their physical and do all that, and then their primary one.
Did
So
the children address the concerns, or did the father about the
nothing
children?
was ever addressed by the father. I didn't even get the medical reports for years later because they were blocked from me. He blocked me from them, but the children never, it was never addressed with them.
No, so maybe the children then spoke to the doctor themselves. Is that how the
I
doctor?
guess, yeah, just with questioning, I'm sure what they were going through. The kids didn't know of the diagnoses ever, but probably just from their evaluation of the children.
Okay. And the reason I ask is I feel like in a lot of these abuse cases or traumatic event case, trauma with the children, I feel like a lot of times the courts try to hide that and
Oh,
don't
yeah,
want to address that. Oh, the kids aren't adjusting well, or have adjustment disorders or PTSD, or, a lot of times they'll do the court appointed therapist that does all the cases and doesn't even address the real stuff. So it's interesting that
absolutely.
your kids got a diagnosis. I
Well,
think
that
that,
was only from the primary care physician, though, and it was never brought into court, and nobody in the court system has ever cared.
did they ever
It's
get
been,
therapy?
pardon?
Did they get therapy, the children?
There- Everything has been such a joke. It seems unreal. Like sitting here telling you, it seems surreal. And it's like reason why I never tell my story or talk to other people because it does sound crazy. It
Mhm.
sounds like, you know,
Not Can't be real in the US today, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I just like this has got to be a bad movie. But yeah, he found a counselor. He, like I said, is very, very calculated and he set up everything perfectly. He basically filed a thing with the doctor. I found a note in the chart about saying that I was lost custody and that I was crazy and that I was not to be shared any information. And
Mm.
um, none of they were set up with a counselor that he found. And this counselor ended up being completely unprofessional and corrupt, like blow your mind, like
Mhm.
telling my children that if he hadn't saved them from me, they would have been in foster care. He would go over to her place apparently and help her build her shed. The kids would go over to her house for dinner. They'd sit around a campfire, so on, like very unprofessional behavior.
Yeah, my ex is friends with their court appointed, hand selected therapist that his attorney selected.
Right.
Like Facebook friends, and would smooth her before and after their appointments,
Yes.
Mhm,
Oh, yes, I know that very well. And it blows my mind. Like, how do they get that
mhm.
advantage? How do they find that? How do they work that? Like I don't know. Maybe it's just what I not don't do that as a profession or as a person. I just don't even know
I
how
wouldn't even know how. Yeah, I don't yeah.
they
I
how it
totally
works in their
understand.
favorite way.
I'm as open, honest,
Yep.
it is what it is person, that you can find. So I don't understand how someone just paint a picture like a facade, in this that everyone believes it's really hard to fathom. Yes.
Absolutely. That's exactly it. And you totally makes you look like the crazy person because it's like,
Yes.
oh, they're just so calm. Like I was talking about, like when I called the police and he would be like all calm and collected and wonderful and charming. And I'd be the one that was like crying or a mess.
Emotional,
Yeah,
emotional.
see,
Yeah,
she's crazy.
right. Because you have emotions. Yeah.
hmm
So so there as far as custody goes, do you still see your children?
And now I have not seen them since November. It's the longest I've gone without seeing them.
Okay, and why aren't you seeing them 48 hours every month?
In November, they're teenagers now. And so, they see things clearly. They see like their dad's behavior, what has gone on. They've just kind of figured things out. And in November, they were very adamant that they weren't going back and that he was abusive, and it was a disaster. Is they stood up and they told him that, and he came to pick them up, that they refused to go back, and then it was just a series of a nightmare events of trying to get an emergency restraining order to being denied and laughed at. I've been mainly pro se for the last 4 years because I have nothing left.
Mhm.
And not only that, but his attorney, my ex's attorney, when she did the financial worksheets, did them purposefully wrong, and I was paying him such a large amount that I could barely survive. So
Yeah.
I definitely don't have money for an attorney. I mean, to the point where when I first lost custody, I was going to the food bank. That's how bad it was.
Yeah.
Although I've been in my profession for 24 years.
Yes.
But sorry, off track there. But what were we saying?
I appreciate you admitting that, because a lot of people in your shoes, and I've been there, have had to rely on assistance and help to make ends meet, just literally survive because of the way the system is built to destroy, you know?
Exactly. I was so ashamed at the time. I was like, oh my gosh. I remember like bawling the first time I went to the food bank, never thinking I was going to be in that position, because I started my profession at 21 years old. I've always worked really hard. I was just humiliated, and I felt horrible. Like this isn't me, and I was always the one to give and take care of other people. Now I'm having to take. It was, I don't feel, thank God those services are there.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Right. I totally, yes. When I've had to use those services, I thought, this is why they're here,
I
For- And
was
I
like,
know
that's
some
so
people might
bad.
use those services for, I don't know, but at the same time, I kind of understood some people just can't make ends meet, and
Right.
might be that way for years. You know what I mean? So like they have to utilize those. Yeah.
Exactly. And you think like, oh my goodness, like I have this great job or I'm a professional, but I
Right.
don't have the money. How is that possible? But when somebody, like you said, is out to destroy you, you
Hmm.
can like, you're barely paying your bills. I mean,
Hmm.
I lost everything.
So this attorney, has he had the same attorney in this new jurisdiction the whole time?
Yes, the
So she
whole
stuck
time.
with him. Hmm.
He has
Yeah.
spent way over $500,000.
Hmm. And now
Oh,
though, every
sorry.
month.
So sorry, so totally off track, but so long story short, for the kids standing up, I was basically laughed at. I was pro se. Um, we
Were the
went to,
kids there?
pardon?
Were they there at the protection from abuse hearing? The kids?
There was no, it was just me. Everything was online, like for the what do you call it again? Ex parte, all that. But you know, I told the kids that they had to go back no matter what because the judge threatened to throw me in jail. And I got a lot of grief with that. It was heartbreaking. I mean, you're so torn. One, to do what you're told to do by this like horrible like justice system, the legal system of you need to do this, this, and this with no understanding. And then children who you're trying to be a mom and love and protect, who my daughter says to me, like, what kind of mom sends them back to an abusive father? Like you're stuck. You're like, you're screwed if you do, you're screwed if you don't.
Yeah, and it kind of
So
teaches them that is okay to live in that kind of environment.
right.
You're forced right back into it. This is your norm, and even though you know it's not normal,
Right.
you have to go back into it and suck it up
Yeah,
and deal with it, you know what I mean? Yeah.
exactly. And
How
so
healthy is that?
right, exactly. Absolutely. And that's heartbreaking as a mom.
Mhm.
And to put your children through that. And so I had to convince him to go back because the judge was going to throw me in jail. And so I said, well, I'm not any good to you. It's not, you're just going to end up going back to your dad anyway if I'm in jail. And so they, said they would go back. They put he came back to pick them up. They put all their stuff in his car, but then they decided to stand out front of his car and yell at him. They're teenagers and they have their own
How
their
old
own
were they?
minds now.
Yeah, how old were they?
They're 14 and 16.
Okay.
And
Yep.
so they were just like, no, I'm done. I'm not tolerating this anymore. And they told him exactly how they felt about him. And so he drove off and left them. And he took all their stuff that was in the car. He never got out of the car to confront them or anything. So then they're back with me. And then, it goes back to his attorney and threatening, and I'm going to jail and everything. And he's supposed to come back and pick them up. So he's scheduled to come back and pick them up, and my kids are threatening to kill themselves or hurt themselves or do something horrible if they're forced back. So I talked to crisis intervention. Meanwhile, I've talked to my therapist. The police had been at my house. I have crisis intervention. They said to take them straight to the ER, which was a disaster. So I take them to the ER when he was supposed to pick them up. Long story, the police, social workers, CPS, there was over a dozen CPS reports against their dad, even by their family physician, which was, not even had anything to do with me.
Is that the one who diagnosed them with PTSD?
Yes.
Is this over a series of years, these reports from CPS, or just
Oh, they were all very recent.
when
Just
the
like,
kids started speaking out?
right.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Because they started to get braver and older.
Mhm,
No.
mhm.
So that just turned into, a nightmare in the ER department, to basically me being forced to leave and being told that their complaints didn't rise to the level of substantiated abuse in our state, and forcing them back with their dad who would come in to pick them up. Um, I was forced to leave the hospital. It was horrible. I was degraded. I was treated horrible. I was treated horrible by the police, by everybody. I was made to feel like I was the problem.
Mhm.
Uh, they were forced back with their dad. My kids, they had to call the police back to get my kids in the dad's car because they were screaming and freaking out apparently, and making a terrible. My daughter apparently even cut her hand on the ER counter because she was freaking out so bad, having to go back to him.
Okay, so this is at the ER and you're removed from the situation because they say you're done, you're over here, mom.
Yeah,
Like
I was already
minimizing,
home.
dismissing what's going on, and your kids are still fighting
Right,
in the hospital area on their own to
right,
not go with their father.
exactly.
Okay.
So they force them back, and they go back to his house, and they're supposed to be on this suicide watch plan, and they're only home for not even 24 hours, and at some point in the night they disappear. I get a call from the police first thing the next morning saying my children have been missing for 10, or for, I think it was like 10 hours. So, and then again I was blamed. And this is all coming from his input to the police, to the
Right,
whoever, and he
right,
has the parenting plan that I lost custody and I'm this horrible person.
right, right.
So the
Because
cop treated me
to
terrible.
add to that, when a mother especially loses custody, it's stigmatic more so than
Yeah,
fathers. It's like, what the heck did this mother do to not have any custody of their kid? Like, it doesn't register with the general public, you know? So when the
I'm glad
policemen and
you
the
brought
officers who
that up.
haven't been in this world of family court, they don't understand. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm so glad you brought that up. That is such a huge thing, because the shame that comes with being a mom who lost her children
Mhm.
is unreal. Like, you don't even want to talk to people. You can't tell people. You don't even want to talk about your own children, because then it's like, well, where are your children? What school do they go to? And,
Yeah.
why are they with their dad? Like, why do they live with the dad? There is a huge,
But
huge
Nate,
stigma with that.
you know? Like, they
Yes.
start wondering what is wrong with her. Right.
Oh, even my own coworkers, well, she must have done something. No mom just
Yeah,
loses her kids for nothing. I must be a drug addict or something, or abuser or alcoholic or something.
right.
So
Yes.
you always find that you're having to defend yourself. So
Yeah.
my kids are back there for that little bit, then they go missing. Then the cop is horrible with me, saying that if I know where they are, and they were obviously coming back to you, then you must let us know right away and return the children. And so they were found 20 hours later at a shelter. They had gone to a shelter. When the cop called me back to tell me he had found them, he changed his tune, and then all of a sudden was like, you really need to get an attorney and fight for these children.
Mhm.
Great if I had money.
Yeah. And even if you got an attorney, do you really think that they'd help you? I
No,
mean, yeah,
no.
it's sad to say. Yeah.
Is exactly it, because that turned, then the kids were forced to return, and then apparently like the CPS or the report says that, their dad pushed my son down the stairs and that all three of my children ran away in sock feet to the neighbor's house and called the police, who once again returned them. And then upon return and CPS evaluation and all these evaluations, there was no significant findings of validated or abuse. And basically the police said unless there was broken bones or bruises, that they weren't going to do anything.
Mm,
And um, then the kids were forced back there. They were cut off from all communication, isolated. They were taken out of, COVID, they were out of school anyway, but they were taken off online classes and forced to do like paper, like
mhm,
homeschool type stuff.
mhm.
No internet access, no phone call access, nothing.
Hmm.
And then it was taken back to court, and that I orchestrated all of this without any proof of anything, and I was blocked from my children completely until they investigate, and that was since the beginning of November.
So
And
we've been
still,
investigating since November.
right, and it's been back to court, and they don't have, this or that, or they don't have, basically it's like, it feels like, well, we don't have any evidence to incriminate you yet, and so we're just going to keep drawing this out until we find something to incriminate you, because
Mhm.
there's nothing. And but I've been given no time. I missed all Thanksgiving, Christmas, my son's birthday. I missed everything. I wasn't allowed to send gifts. I wasn't allowed to send anything for Christmas, Easter, nothing. I've had no contact with them except for one Zoom phone call a week.
Is this through a temporary court order by the judge?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So
they're supposed to be doing this investigation too.
who is?
It was the court counselor who my children refused to talk to, who completely, absolutely lied as well, and
Mhm.
said that my son said they made it all up, and his dad was a great guy.
Now, who's the court counselor? Is that a guardian ad litem?
No, the guardian ad litem is still on the case
Hmm.
and is supposed to be investigating, and it's not finalized. They still
Oh,
haven't interviewed me and gone through their whole process. But the other one is, like you said, that court appointed counselor.
oh, okay. Like the court appointed therapist for the children?
Right. Yeah. Who basically completely lied. So all the Zoom recordings or Zoom calls with the children are recorded, and it
Mhm.
just shows how much they're deteriorating, how upset they are, speaking truth about like how horrible things are, that they have no communication, no I mean, it's all there in recording, saying about um, the way they're being treated, and how much they don't want, nobody wants them to have contact with me or anybody to do with me. So they
Mhm.
haven't been able to talk to my family, their friends that are with, have know me, like our mutual friends, their
Right.
friends that have anything to do with me or
Yes.
no.
Okay. So, and there's still, it's been like 6 months and still the investigation's going and you haven't been contacted yet by the GAL.
I will be talking to him. I do have an appointment now.
But it
So
took 6 months. Yeah.
but nothing in that, no consideration for the fact that we haven't seen each other at all. I have my kids on Zoom saying things like they're like having nightmares, how horrible it is. My daughter saying like, I have nightmares that I'm behind glass and I can see you and we're trying to get to each other, but we can see each other, but we can't get to each other. And
Mhm.
that they wake up crying, and it's been horrible.
Mhm.
And still I don't have any answers. And we were talking about attorneys. I hired an attorney for a short period of time when all this went down. My generous donations of friends and people just reaching out and wanting to help,
Mhm.
but that went nowhere fast. That exhausted $15,000 like that, and I have nothing to show for it.
Yeah. Right.
And I couldn't keep him again. I couldn't keep another attorney because I don't have the money. And I
Yeah.
have begged for pro bono. I have reached out to pro bono services, the YWCA. I have begged their attorney. I have begged people literally for help.
Yes.
Nothing.
Now, is that because you're a healthcare worker who makes a decent income,
Right.
right? But your income's going out the door. You don't
Right.
have to keep all of that for yourself and to support you as a single parent with your kids. A
Exactly.
single parent income in and of itself is so difficult to survive on.
Oh,
But
yes.
then when you're single parent and you're supporting the other parent who's a single parent, but they keep their income, and you're giving most of it out. Like you
Exactly.
said, you had to go to a food bank to
Yeah,
survive.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I've spent all my retirement, all my savings, investments, everything's gone. And I'm
Right.
over,
Yeah.
I think I'm probably over 100,000 in debt.
Mhm. Yes.
I
And
don't have anything left.
yes. And the judge on your case, has that been the same judge or have you had?
They've been mostly, actually, it's all been commissioners besides the trial.
Mhm. So what's a commissioner?
Oh goodness, I'm not sure what the difference. I am so bad. Like I feel like I should know all of this after going through this for 10 years, but
Uh-huh.
um the ones that do all the motions and that type of litigation is the commissioner, and then the only ones that do the actual like trial and like I forget what else, but trial was the judges.
Mhm. Okay. I see. So
It's
motions court
confusing for
has a lesser status judge in motions court or something.
yes,
Okay.
exactly.
And the more senior judges do the custody trials
Right.
wherever your state is. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So
Exactly.
yeah, now have your kids testified to whatever abuse that they have alleged that they're going through. Your son
Not
being pushed down the stairs, and
not in court. They haven't been allowed to.
because this has not gone back to trial in 4 years.
Right. Yeah. And it's supposed to go back to trial, but I don't even know how that's going to happen. I mean, going through all of this and, even just pro se and trying to take things back and fight for my rights as just a human and a mom, I've been laughed at. I've been insulted. I've been told to get an attorney. I've been told, what was the latest one about, he yelled at me, what jurisdiction does he have? I don't know the law. I'm expected to perform at the level of an attorney. It's horrifying. Pro se is the scariest thing I've ever done in my life. And I don't have that knowledge. Plus, I'm a full time in my career. I don't have time to study a whole nother career and understand all of
Right.
it.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
So I don't even know, like for trial. And then I just got word that my ex-husband has retired and is moving my children out of state.
So he's relocating.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So he's retired from the military, probably 20
Right.
years. Okay.
Right.
So he's younger, retired after 20 years, and is leaving the state.
Right.
Okay. So that's the trial you're going to, a relocation trial.
Not even, because I'm not even fighting it. I'm
No.
not like, I'm not even fighting that. I have so much with all of this. He's trying to now file to get more money from me because he's retired. He doesn't have a job lined up, and that he is moving back to the state where his parents live and going to be staying with them until he finds something. And these are my children, have only a few more years left in high school. So right now, I don't even know what the words are besides completely overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Extremely overwhelmed. I don't even know what to do, what ways up, how to do. I'm
Yeah. You don't know what to file or how to respond or anything like that.
no, and I can't afford anybody to help me. And I beg for help from, free services, and it's
Hmm.
like it's non-existent.
Hmm. So when you're going through all this, there's like victims advocacy centers, and the YMCA is supposed to offer help for people or children claiming abuse and women who've been in this first of all, just legal abuse nightmare hell. I mean, this is abuse in and of itself. Just this legal domestic violence system is abusive. And so you haven't found any help with why or anywhere.
No, not like, just with like counseling and therapy, but not for legal assistance.
Right. Yes.
It's like,
Yes.
well, we can do classes for, like, I've done a classes for domestic violence, for all kinds of things, and tons of help and therapy for domestic violence, abuse, trauma, everything that I've been going through, but not for how to deal with the legal part of things.
Right. Yeah. So it's hard not to feel like you want to give up, you
Absolutely.
know?
Yeah,
I mean, what else can you do? You've done everything that you can, you know?
exactly. And you feel so torn because as a mom, you'll never give up on your children. But at the same time, it's destroying you physically, mentally, and financially. I mean, everything. I mean, I've never been more physically ill in my life as I have been in the last 4 years with physical ailments, things that I've never, things
Mhm.
that because of that massive amount of stress and
Mhm.
trauma on your body that starts to show physically.
Yeah. Do you mind going into some of those details?
Um, just, you know, I don't, I don't know if it just, I'm
It's up to
not
you. But the
sure.
reason I ask, like, for example, myself, the trauma is so extensive and it's complex, PTSD,
Yeah,
because it just is so many different ways coming at you, trying to destroy your life. But
yeah.
as you say, what you've described. So a lot of times it results in like autoimmune disorders, and not that,
Yes, I
um,
have an autoimmune disease,
yeah,
exactly.
and so I've been, not fully diagnosed, but I've requested from the doctor medicine to help with like fibromyalgia,
Yes,
because I think that that's what I might have, because it's just your body is so ailed by the constant stressors, the constant litigation that you don't do, it's on you. And so yeah, like joints, aches. I feel like I'm 90 years old sometimes waking up, and then trying to make it through the day. And it's hard to find time for that self-care, which is so desperately needed in order to heal. And it's so hard to heal because how can you heal when you're constantly being bludgeoned and stabbed constantly? It's
it's
impossible.
making
So
me like tear because it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, it's like word for word, like just to have somebody to talk to or understand and relate.
mhm,
There's not many people, not people that I work with or involved with or friends that, thank God, can't relate and understand. But it's
yeah.
exactly it. It's that constant strain on your body of not sleeping, not eating properly, like just constant, like, I am diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, and just things are, like you said, like aching or headaches, not working properly, feeling exhausted.
Mhm.
And then you have just that emotional, like, nightmares, distress, worrying about your children, missing your children, just feeling like times when, you can just be so busy with work or going about your business, and then something will come over you and that's all you can focus on,
Yeah.
and you just can't
Yeah.
get out of it, and you're just like,
Hits you. You're not with your kids. When are you going to see your kids? You have
yes,
no idea when, if ever again.
right,
And
yes, are they
it,
okay?
the grief, it's like death. It really is, when this system or your ex-partner just rips your children from your lives, when they're saying they're being harmed, you can't do anything. Like,
So,
it's like a kidnapper. You see these movies, your kids are kidnapped, they're telling you, give me this so you get your kids back. In family court, sometimes they say, do this so you get your kids back, and just never give you your kids back. You know what I
right.
mean? Like,
So that's exactly it. I've bent
yeah,
over backwards. I've jumped through all the hoops,
yeah,
and then there's always an excuse or a reason, or, well, you didn't do this enough, or you didn't do
yeah,
this right thing, or you
yeah.
need to do this more, or,
Yes.
my
It's like
goodness,
this big game. It's like a
yes,
game, a sick, twisted game that,
right,
yes, I know.
exactly it. But I know, like, if I won the lottery tomorrow and came upon $1 million, this would all change. I know, like, probably, I mean, not for sure, but, you know, in my head, I think like, well, then I could hire the best attorney out there and this
Right.
would be all over.
The one who has all the 35-star reviews or more, that probably has maybe even a better connection with the judge
Right.
than his, who has maybe the
Exactly.
25 5-star, you know what I mean? Yes.
And I've
Yeah.
never had anybody to really fight for me or tell my story or even, you know, what is that called? Like be on the attack,
Yes.
to not attack, but
Well, the offense, not
offense. Thank
constantly
you.
defense, you know?
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
I've never been on that side
Yeah.
because I'm so busy defending myself and I don't have anybody to fight for me like
Yeah.
that.
Because they take the limelight off of the important things, the things that actually matter, like the safety of the children and the best interest of the children. Instead, it's what this party over here wants and is constantly suing you, like,
Yes.
and it's not about really the children, because if it was, people would listen to 14 and 16-year olds.
16, crying out for help,
Yes.
sad, diagnosed with things they were never diagnosed with before. These are coming here for a weekend with me and holding on to me, bawling, like, please don't make me go. It's like, it's heart wrenching. And if anybody would really honestly, like you said, listen to the children and what they want and like what their complaints are and what would be really truly in their best interest, it wouldn't be this. And
Mm,
it definitely wouldn't be like completely eliminating a parent from their life,
yeah.
especially their mother. Not, I mean, in both sides, mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I think as a mom, there is definitely a bit of a special connection there when you're, carrying your child for 9 months and giving birth and doing all that. You
Yes.
definitely have a very special bond.
Yes. Yes.
And the children have a very special bond with mom. I mean, in so many cultures, them it's well, every culture, and I don't understand why our culture, or if there is a culture, why there is not more importance put on the mom
Mm-hmm. Yes.
in that relationship with the children. I mean, dad too is a very crucial relationship, don't get me wrong, but
Yes. Children need both parents, it's hard when it's such a difficult, what it's like kind of being in the dad's shoes in a sense, children ripped from your life. It's a thing you typically hear,
right.
the
Yeah,
dads have been going through forever, and paying the child support, barely surviving. That's been the dad's gripes, a lot of it for a long time,
right. And I've
um,
seen so many things of high suicide rates with those dads, and
yeah.
it's
You
horrible.
you understand the horrific nature of what happens to them when they're the ones bludgeoned and ripped apart, and ripped from the kids' lives.
Absolutely, and eliminated, and what it does to the children. Like you said, nobody focus on what's best for the children.
Yeah.
And that is horrible and devastating for a child to have that person ripped from their lives or not be able to be with them or just be poisoned against that person too. Like, oh, they're a bad person.
Yes. So I think what's really hard too is these situations where the kids are alleging abuse and claiming dysfunction, and the father's not, they don't want to go back to the father, and I think it's so hard because a lot of people then look at the mom as, oh, it's all you, the kids just want to be with you.
Right,
And they're not addressing if there are real true issues. No one even looks at it,
right.
because the kids want to be with the mom, because they have maybe that special bond, or the father is throwing one of the children down the stairs and there's aggression that they haven't dealt with, or whatever it may be. No one even looks at that,
No,
you
yeah,
know
it's
so,
all brushed under the carpet. It's just gone. Like,
yeah, minimize, ignore, dismissed, it's not even existing. So it's just so difficult.
it is.
Yeah.
The scary thing is like, now what? Like, what do you do? And how do you change this? And I'm looking at what is going to happen in our future. What happens? You destroy somebody. What happens with your financials for the future, for any type of stability, for um, stability for the children and like college. And then you think about the children of the permanent damage within the children that this has created and caused, that PTSD, that everything that doesn't just go away. Now we're looking at what dysfunction and years of therapy and how do we heal our children after all of this.
And even if they get therapy, they might be a parent someday that doesn't think they need it, you know, and it's that cyclical generational type curse that
Yes,
creates the legacy of, well, they might be the one pushing, not saying your kids do this, but having uncontrollable anger where
yeah,
they might be lashing out at their child. Maybe the same
absolutely.
way was they were lashed out on, you know?
Oh yeah. And
Yeah.
those kids that turn to suicide or drugs or alcohol, oh my gosh, my kids don't even I think of them as babies, like so innocent. And in one of my Zoom calls, my girls are talking about alcohol and drugs to numb the pain. And I'm like, how do you
Mm,
even know that? Like, is it
mhm,
TV or what? Or, but
mhm,
even discussing that
right.
is devastating.
It is. It is.
Yeah, it's hard to know what's next. How do
Mhm. So,
we survive and move forward?
yes. So I think this is really good, and I hope it's healing. For me, it's very healing,
It is
actually.
for me too. Like I said, it's hard.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
it brings tears to your eyes and to like just to have somebody understand and
Mhm.
everything like you're feeling inside and what you've been through. There's somebody there that knows and understands and can say it like word for word. I God forbid anybody else have to go through this, but it's nice to have somebody to relate to that truly understands because so many people that they want to help and it's hard because the friendships and everything are so strained because they want to help
Yeah.
but they don't know how and they end up upsetting you by things that they say because they just don't get it.
Yeah, and I feel sometimes your stuff might be so heavy burdened, you just don't even think someone will understand it to a tiny degree. So sometimes, like, what's the point of putting this on them? Or they might think you're always
Put them on
unloading on them. So you just sometimes just stop and carry it yourself, you know?
you and you retreat, you isolate from things because it is. I mean, it's
Mhm,
constant. The
mhm.
litigation, the pain, the everything, it's constant.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
too much for us to deal with and it's so much to put onto somebody else.
Yes. So thank you for sharing today.
So much for your time and for all of this. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I think this was really great. So this is our first interview. My first time doing this. Your
So
first time
sweet.
probably telling your story in a linear fashion.
It really is. Like and like you said, like it's so hard to tell your story. It's hard for people to understand and you're silenced. You live
Yeah,
in silence and you live in silence within the system too because every time you try to speak up or say anything, you're, you know, put down for it or even restricted from it because God
or they
forbid
say,
tell the truth.
yeah, or they say, no, you can't talk about this because the safety of the children or whatever, that,
Even
oh,
like because bad mouthing the other person, I'm not bad mouthing him or bad mouthing anybody. It is what it is. It's the truth.
it's the truth. It's your story.
Right.
United States citizen, you're an American, you
Right.
have freedom of speech. We all do. And you're telling your story. And this is, you know,
It is. It's my story and that's how people move forward and that's how people heal from, losing a child to death or cancer or whatever it is.
yeah,
But our situation, we're being told you cannot tell your story, which makes it even harder to heal and move forward and find strength and find support.
because it is truly a loss. It's like a death. It really is. And
It is. It's like it's even worse. I can't say that because thank God, I've never been through that and knock on wood.
yeah,
But, you know, it's like the death that never ends because there's a grieving process and you keep going through the grieving process and it just never ends. There's never a healing period, at
mhm.
least not when you're going through it for years and years and years. God
Yeah.
knows how long.
And your kids were 3 and 6 when yours started, and now they're almost aged out of the system.
Right.
Almost.
Yes, exactly.
It's sad that you had to live your most of your motherhood through this whole. time. I know. I don't
It's
mean
like
to bring
we're
that up,
robbed
but
of it. Yeah.
I know. It is. Yep.
And
And
it's what I wanted more than anything in the world was to be a mom. I have so much to give as a mom, and so much like experience and wisdom and love, so much.
yes.
And I am robbed from being able to give that and share that with my kids.
Yes. Yes. I know.
You
You're welcome. Well, I just hope and live in the
like so,
hope. What was that?
so much of this, if you were to talk to me, years ago or right when I lost my kids, I wouldn't be able to talk about it. I wouldn't be able to make sense. You learn as you go, and
Yeah.
just breaking down, bawling about it. And, there's a point where you just like cry and cry and cry. You've bawled so much that, you know, you just don't, not that you don't ever cry, but
Yeah.
it's a lot less.
Yeah. And I feel sometimes you might like feel numb to it.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
sad, but your joy is stolen and it's really hard to feel true joy, you know? And
Yes,
you just kind of feel this numbness because you're just like existing, you know? Yeah.
exactly the word I was looking for. It's like you no longer can cry, you just feel numb. Yeah,
Yes. That's really what it is, you know? Yeah.
definitely.
Yes. So thank you so much for
Thank
this
you.
time. And I think this is wonderful. Thank you again. And
You too. I just want to
yeah,
like, with us, like with everything we're going through, it's like, how do you heal? How do you survive? How do you reach other people? How do we support each other? And how do we make change?
I think a lot of it, and I'm glad you're bringing this up because I want to close with this. It is
Okay.
so important that we tell our stories, and fathers are sharing their stories, and there's so
Right.
many different stories out there, stories of abuse, stories of just plain injustice. I mean, the only way to create change is to create awareness, I feel like. And because before you get into this system, you have no clue that this
Right.
is what it's like.
If
Like, I have
only,
no idea.
exactly. If
I
only
couldn't,
with somebody like you or me there guiding you through the whole time, right from the get-go, maybe have a different outcome. I don't know.
yeah. And I had a bunch of married friends and not no one who went through anything like this. And it's still hard to find, but
Because it's hard for people to be open about this. And
yes,
right, it's like to find somebody with the wisdom that has gone through this.
yes. And to eliminate the shame, we got to eliminate the stigma and
Yeah,
the shame.
that's
So,
a huge thing. Huge.
yes. So thank you, Carmen. We're going to end this here.
Okay.
And I'm sure we'll be in touch more.
Absolutely.
Thank you for entrusting me with your story and in the world with your story. I know a lot of women and protective parents will be able to relate to this story.
Thank
So
you for
thank
letting me
you.
share.
Thank you. All right.
Feels
Have a good,
empowering.
yes. Well, you have a good night.
Thank
Okay.
you. You too.
Thank you. Good night.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.